Kavi the fisherman lived in a small village by the sea, a place where the salty air always tickled your nose. Every morning, just as the sun painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Kavi would take his small wooden boat out onto the calm waters. He knew all the good spots, the places where the fish liked to gather. His net was old, mended in many places, but it was strong, just like Kavi's hope for a good catch each day. He cast his net with a practiced flick of his wrist, watching it spread wide before sinking into the cool, blue depths. This particular morning felt different somehow. A gentle breeze was blowing, and the sea was unusually still, like it was holding a secret. He waited patiently, as fishermen often do, humming a little tune his mother used to sing. The sun climbed higher, warming his weathered face. Hours seemed to pass, and his net felt light. Just when he was thinking of trying another spot, he felt a sudden, strong tug. It was not the usual wriggle of a fish, or even a group of them. This was heavy, very heavy. Kavi's heart gave a little jump. Could it be a treasure, or perhaps just a very large rock? He pulled and pulled, his muscles straining. The rope bit into his hands, but he didn't give up, no. He was determined to see what the sea had offered him today. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to haul his heavy catch towards the surface. The boat rocked from side to side with the effort. What could it be, he wondered, his mind racing with possibilities. Maybe a chest full of gold from an old shipwreck, or perhaps some strange, unknown creature from the ocean's mysterious depths. The anticipation was almost too much to bear. Finally, with one last mighty heave, the net broke the surface. It wasn't gold, nor was it a monstrous fish. Instead, nestled amongst the seaweed and a few disappointed crabs, was an old tarnished brass pot, sealed tightly with a lead stopper. Kavi stared at the pot. It was intricately carved with strange symbols he didn't recognize. It looked ancient, like it had been lying on the seabed for centuries, waiting. He carefully untangled it from his net, his curiosity growing with every passing second. It was surprisingly heavy for its size. He tapped it gently. It sounded hollow, yet the stopper was firmly in place, bearing an old faded seal. What secrets did this old pot hold? Was it valuable? Should he try to open it here, on his little boat, or wait until he got back to the shore? The temptation was too strong. He had to know what was inside, right then and there. With trembling fingers, Kavi took his fishing knife and began to pry at the lead stopper. It was stuck fast, sealed by time and the sea. He worked at it carefully, chipping away at the edges, his breath held in anticipation. The sun was high now, beating down on him, but he barely noticed. All his focus was on this mysterious pot from the depths. After a good few minutes of effort with a final grunt, the stopper gave way with a soft pop. He quickly set the pot down on the floor of his boat, his heart thumping like a drum against his ribs. What marvel or monster lay within? He leaned forward, peering cautiously. At first, nothing happened. Kavi frowned. Was it empty after all? Just an old, heavy pot? Then a thin wisp of smoke, pale and grey, curled out from the opening. It was followed by another and another, thicker and darker this time. The smoke began to rise, swirling and twisting, filling the small boat with a strange, acrid smell like ancient spices and something else, something powerful. Kavi coughed, waving his hand to clear the air, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. The smoke billowed upwards, higher and higher, reaching towards the sky, taking on a monstrous shape. He had never seen anything like it in his entire life, not even in the wildest stories. The swirling smoke coalesced, solidifying into a colossal figure. It was a genie. A gigantic genie, easily 10 times the size of Kavi's boat, with eyes like burning coals and a fearsome scowl etched onto its smoky face. Its arms were as thick as tree trunks, and its voice, when it finally spoke, was like the roar of 1,000 thunderstorms combined, shaking the very air around them. Kavi, small and insignificant in his little boat, could only stare up in utter terror. This was no friendly spirit from a children's tale. This was a creature of immense power, and by the looks of it, immense anger too. "Free at last!" the genie boomed, its voice echoing across the water, causing ripples on the calm surface. After all these centuries trapped in that wretched prison. "And you, little human," it snarled, its fiery eyes fixing on Kavi, who felt a cold shiver run down his spine despite the hot sun. "You are the one who has released me. For that you might expect a reward, yes, but you are too late, far too late. I swore an oath that whoever freed me in the first 100 years, I would grant them riches. In the second, I would grant them 3 wishes, but after so long my patience has worn thin and my heart has filled with rage. The genie towered over Kavi, its massive form blocking out the sun. For centuries I've waited. For centuries I've plotted my revenge on the one who would finally open this accursed pot. Its voice thundered, making Kavi's small boat rock violently. And now you are here. Prepare to face my wrath, fisherman. I shall not grant you wishes. I shall not give you gold. No, I shall make you pay for my long, lonely imprisonment. I shall find a most unpleasant way for you to meet your end. Kavi felt a wave of despair wash over him. How could he possibly escape such a powerful and furious creature? His fishing knife would be useless, his strength nothing against this giant. But Kavi, though a simple fisherman, was not without courage or a quick mind. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down. He knew that begging for mercy would likely be futile against such ancient anger. He needed a different approach, a clever one. He thought of his family, his village, and a tiny spark of an idea ignited in his mind. It was a long shot, a very risky gamble indeed, but it was the only chance he had. He had to outsmart this genie. He took a deep breath, trying to make his voice sound steady, even though his knees were knocking together like coconuts in a sack. He looked up at the towering genie, feigning confusion and a touch of disbelief. "You?" Kavi said, trying to sound unimpressed, even a little doubtful. "You came out of this tiny pot?" He picked up the brass pot, which now looked comically small compared to the colossal genie. "Forgive me, O mighty one," he continued, his voice dripping with false skepticism. "But it seems quite impossible, no? How could a being as vast and magnificent as yourself, with such power and such a booming voice, ever have fit inside such a small, insignificant container? My eyes must be deceiving me. Surely it is some kind of trickery." The genie, who had been expecting screams and pleas for mercy, looked taken aback by the fisherman's audacious words. Its fiery eyes narrowed. "Impossible!" it roared, a plume of smoke escaping its nostrils. "Foolish mortal! Are you questioning my power? Are you daring to suggest that I, the most formidable of all genies, could not have resided within that vessel?" The genie's pride, it seemed, was even bigger than its enormous frame. Kavi could see a chink in the armor of its rage. It was working. The genie was clearly annoyed that its grand entrance and terrifying threats were being met with such peculiar doubt rather than abject terror. He had to press his advantage carefully. "Well," Kavi said, shrugging his shoulders as if it were a simple matter of logic, "it just does not seem physically possible, great genie. Look at you, you fill the sky. And look at this pot." He held it up again. "It is barely bigger than my head. Perhaps you were a much smaller genie back then, or maybe there is another, bigger pot from which you truly emerged, and this little one is just a decoy." He tried to look genuinely puzzled, scratching his head for added effect. This line of questioning was designed to prick the genie's immense ego, to make it feel the need to prove itself, even in such a small matter. The genie scoffed, a sound like a strong wind whistling through a canyon. "A decoy? Smaller? You insult me, little man. I am as I have always been. My power allows me to take any form, to shrink or to grow as I please," it bellowed, clearly agitated by Kavi's persistent disbelief. "You doubt my ability to fit into my own prison. What an ignorant fisherman you are. I shall show you. I shall demonstrate just how easily I can return to that pot, and then, once you have seen it with your own eyes, I will deal with you for your insolence." The genie seemed more focused now on proving Kavi wrong than on immediately destroying him. With a huff of smoky indignation, the giant genie began to shimmer and change. Its massive form started to swirl, becoming less solid, more like the smoke from which it had first appeared. The colossal figure began to shrink, the smoke contracting, pulling inward towards the little brass pot that Kavi still held, his hand surprisingly steady now, his mind sharp and alert. Kavi watched, his heart pounding in his chest like a war drum, but his face remained a mask of calm curiosity. He had to time this perfectly. The smoke funneled down, a swirling vortex of grey and black, heading straight for the narrow opening of the pot. He could feel the wind of its passage. The last wisp of the genie's smoky essence was sucked into the pot with a soft whoosh. In that very instant, before the genie could even think of re-emerging or realizing the trick, Kavi, with lightning speed, slammed the lead stopper back into the mouth of the pot. He pushed it down hard, then, taking a piece of strong fishing line from his basket, he quickly and tightly bound the stopper to the pot. winding it round and round, making sure it was absolutely secure. The pot vibrated slightly in his hands, and he could hear a faint, muffled roaring from within, a sound of frustrated fury, but it was trapped, securely trapped once more. Kavi didn't waste a moment. He stood up in his small boat, took a deep breath, and with all the strength he possessed, he hurled the brass pot as far as he possibly could out into the ocean. It sailed through the air in a high arc, glinting in the sunlight, before landing with a distant splash and sinking quickly beneath the waves, hopefully into the deepest trench where it would remain undisturbed for another 1,000 years or even longer. Kavi watched until the ripples disappeared, then he let out a long, shaky breath of relief. He had faced a terrible danger, and, using his wits alone, he had survived. He smiled, picked up his oars and began to row back to shore, a very wise and now slightly famous fisherman.